You know something, President Nelson, my son, I remember when he turned 12 and he had his first worthiness interview. And it wasn't long after, I think a day or so later, and I was driving him to an event at a school for band. And it was just him and me in the car. And I remember talking to him and just visiting with him, but I knew something had changed in my 12-year-old son's countenance. I knew something was different. And I just didn't know what it was. But now I look back, and I know what it was. Is he had that worthiness interview, and a bishop asks him all the same questions I was asked. It traumatized him as well. And that sent my son on a corrosive path to his mental health. You know, I placed the worthiness interviews as the second heaviest contributor. After abuse, the worthiness interviews were the second heaviest contributor to his end-of-life decision. I have no doubt. Did you know that about 2 weeks before he died, it was time to do a worthiness interview. And he aggressively didn't want to do that worthiness interview. And me being the lazy learner, foolish father that I am, I said, son, just go get it done. It's no big deal. You know, somewhere in my heart, I did know it was a big deal because they had harmed me, but it's our culture, President Nelson. This is what Mormon people do. They go send their kids to get worthiness interviews. He didn't want to do that. He didn't want to do that at worthiness interview. Did you know, President Nelson, that the night before my son died, we were in church, or the day before, we were in church, and my son did not want to pass the sacrament aggressively, to the point he shook his hands and walked out of the sacrament meeting to not pass the sacrament. I was so confused by that, President Nelson. I did not understand why my son did that. He didn't want to pass the sacrament, and I can only wonder why. I know it's those worthiness interviews. I know that he was instructed to not pass the sacrament or something along those lines, and probably not take the sacrament. Nobody else knows what's going on. But my son was terribly shamed, probably by those instructions. He was a conscientious young man, a young man that wouldn't lie. At least he would feel bad about it if he did. He was aware. And because of that, he didn't handle the worthiness interview very well, the process. But President Nelson, do you know who does handle these worthiness interviews very well? It's those who will lie and not even think about it. That's who will answer those questions with no problem and not be affected by a worthiness interview. You know, your medicine is more damaging than the harm you're trying to the ill you're trying to cure. You, President Nelson, now it's you, but those who preceded you as well, have set up a system to train children how to lie, to make them comfortable with lying. And any of my Mormon brothers out there and friends, you know I'm right. In private conversations that they won't have with you, President Nelson, those intimate conversations, every single one of my friends, I guess I'm exposing them, aren't I? Every single one of them said, yeah, it's a path to lying. These are my active Latter-day Saint friends. I still have a lot of active Latter-day Saint friends. They're my family, my friends. My lifetime of friends are still Latter-day Saint men, right? But yeah, when I talk to them, and I talk to almost everybody, yeah, those worthiness interviews are a path to training your children to be liars. You're training the children. Is that a healthy response, President Nelson? Is that a healthy fruit of what you believe is bringing righteousness to the LDS people when you're actually making them really good liars and real comfortable with lying? This is not the path of Christ, President Nelson. The fruits of this are not healthy and they're not good. You know something else? You got all kinds of people with a damaged sense of self-worth. You know, you go and you ask a 12-year-old about masturbation, and you drill that on them, and you think that's okay, which I was asked so many times. President Nelson, this is harmful. Did you know that a 12-year-old is not supposed to have mastered his body by 12 years old? No 12-year-old has mastered their body. We're here to gain a body, to gain experience, and to develop the strength to master our bodies. But when you're placing an unrealistic expectation on 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds who have already mastered their body, some are a little older when their sexuality comes in, and you're expecting them to be the masters of that immediately, and you're shaming them, and they're telling them not to take the sacrament so the whole world can see that. You're telling them not to participate in passing the sacrament, to shame them in front of their entire LDS community. This is not healthy, President Nelson. You know something, President Nelson? You're supposed to be gaining revelation for new knowledge and new technology. As the world changes and as our knowledge advances, you, as the prophet, seer, and revelator, are supposed to work with those changes, supposed to adjust the church and its leadership to those changes. And I can think of a great big change going on right now. It's changing the entire world way outside of the church. And that is the internet, President Nelson. You did not grow up in the same world as today's 12-year-olds or 13-year-olds or 14-year-olds. These children are in an internet age, a much more coarse age, a less refined age, a less moral age than what you grew up in. And did you know that pornography is almost anywhere? You can be in any room, anywhere there's an internet connection that will reach your phone. Guess what? You have a pornography connection to that. And now you're placing so much greater pressure on these children. It's everywhere. And then you're shaming them when they're under way more pressure than you. There has to be a more delicate path that doesn't crush the sense of worth of the LDS children whom you lead. There has to be a better path. You know, I'm thinking that you lay down what Christ expects, and then simply have the bishop ask, do you believe you're worthy to go to the temple? That's it. And then let them read what is worthy, and then simply ask the question, do you believe you're worthy? And that's the end of it, you know. But when you start probing into their intimate life, their intimate development of their sexuality, you know, you got a 13, 14-year-old, you know, masturbating, or a 15, and you're going to drill them and shame them. You can do better. You are damaging. Did you know that there was over thousands of people, right?